Hi there, Andy Adams here. In my last video, I shared a little bit about my autoimmune journey, how my health issues started over 20 years ago, and how long it took me to truly understand what was happening to my body. I also promised that I would share what helped me heal, and how today I live without the pain and the symptoms that once completely took over my life. So in this video, I want to share my journey from living with my illness to a pain-free and symptom-free life that I live today and have lived for quite a few years now. Over the last 20 years, I've learned so much about autoimmune illness, chronic inflammation, gut health, and how deeply connected everything in the body really is. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I tried things that didn't work, and there was times I felt very discouraged and overwhelmed. But little by little, I started to learn how to listen to my body. What I'm sharing today is simply what worked for me, and also what I have seen help many of my clients over the years. Everyone is different, and healing is never a one-size-fits-all. But I hope that something in my story may help you too. The very first thing that I was doing when I started my journey, I removed gluten and all wheat-containing foods from my diet. I also cut out processed foods and sugar completely because I wanted to eat as clean and natural as possible. Honestly, when I started to read ingredient labels, it was shocking to me how many chemicals and additives were hidden in everyday foods. At first, I followed more of a paleo-style type of eating. I ate meats and vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds. But what I else did was I kept a food journal, and I began noticing that certain foods, especially some vegetables and leafy greens, didn't seem to agree with me at all. And that really surprised me because we're always told vegetables are healthy and that we should eat more of them. But I learned something very important during this journey. Sometimes healing starts when we stop assuming and start paying attention to how our own body responds. So, little by little, I removed the foods that seemed to trigger symptoms for me. A little into my journey, I came across information about a Dr. Salisbury from many years ago, like the early 1900s. His approach was very meat-focused, something similar to what people today would call carnivore or maybe ketogenic, although a true ketogenic diet is less protein and really high fat. So, anyway, for about 10 weeks, I simplified my diet completely. I mostly ate meat, fish, chicken, eggs, healthy, fats and stuff like that. And honestly, that elimination phase changed everything for me. It gave my body a chance to calm down and heal. I also only ate 2 meals in like an 8 to 9 hour period, not because I wanted to, but because due to the foods I was eating, I was simply not hungry. Today, I know we call this intermittent fasting. And I learned that giving your gut rest periods is actually a very important part that contributes to the healing of the gut. So in the beginning, due to eating mostly meats, I did struggle a little bit with constipation, but increasing my water and increasing healthy fats helped tremendously. As did taking a daily dose of magnesium, but I will get into that a little bit later. After about 10 weeks, I slowly began adding foods back in my diet one at a time. That's really important because it helps you understand what your own body tolerates. Only add one new food every 3 to 4 days and pay really close attention if your body sends you any signals that it maybe doesn't like a particular food. So the first foods I added were yogurt and then kefir, because I always loved them. Then I slowly introduced fruits, mostly berries at first. Again, I would test one food for several days, then adding another, paying close attention to how I felt. Eventually, I added vegetables that botanically are considered fruits, like cucumbers, squash, tomatoes, peppers, avocados, and eggplant. Now, I do want to mention that some people are sensitive to nightshades. So if that is you, you may need to be careful with foods like tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, goji berries, and potatoes. For me personally, I found I could tolerate most of the nightshades except for potatoes. And let me tell you, that was really hard for this German girl because I absolutely love my potato dishes. I love my dumplings and my potato pancakes and whatever else we all make. But I finally reached a point where I realized I valued my health more than certain foods. I also added fermented foods such as pickles, onions, and garlic, and later on I added other vegetables. Fermented foods are extremely beneficial to the gut. Over time, as my gut healed, I was eventually able to actually add more foods back into my diet. In the last couple of years, I have added rice without any issues, and more recently I've started making my own sourdough bread. But I'm still very careful about ingredients. I personally chose flour that is tested pesticide-free and glyphosate-free because I truly believe quality matters, and I also believe that pesticides, especially glyphosate, is so damaging to our gut. And honestly, I don't eat a lot of bread, so it's not really a big deal for me. But I bake a whole loaf and I put half of it in the freezer, so that's something that maybe you want to do later on. Anyway, so now I'm going to go into supplements that helped me during my healing journey. These are simply things that worked for me. So I'm not saying everybody needs them, but I do believe they supported my body tremendously. One of the first supplements I used was L-glutamine, which can be incredibly supportive for your gut healing and repairing the lining of the gut. I took 5 milligrams twice a day. I do want to mention one word of caution. If you currently have or have had gastrointestinal or liver cancer, this is something you should discuss with your doctor first, because cancer cells can also use glutamine for growth. However, from what I've learned also is that the gut uses most of the L-glutamine itself, so very little actually makes it its way into the bloodstream. So if you have had a cancer that was outside of your digestive system, for example, skin cancer or a brain tumor, this generally is not a consideration then and does not have the same concern. Of course, everyone is different, and it's always important to listen to your body and work with a healthcare professional when needed. So then I also took 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate every night. A lot of people with gut issues are actually very low in magnesium because when the gut is inflamed or damaged, it often cannot even absorb nutrients properly. Magnesium was really helpful for me because it helps calm the nervous system, it supports better sleep, it lowers the stress and the cortisol levels, and it also helps reduce inflammation. In addition, I took 1,000 micrograms of methyl B12, also known as methylcobalamin, which is the natural form of B12, and it's easily absorbed. It's very important that you use the sublingual form because it bypasses the digestive system and allowing for direct absorption into the bloodstream through the vascular mucous membrane underneath the tongue. Another thing I added was a high-quality refrigerated multi-strain probiotic with at least 50 billion CFUs. I specifically looked for strains like Lactobacillus acidophilus, Lactobacillus rhamnosus, and Bifidobacterium longum. I found it worked best taking them either early in the morning on an empty stomach or later at night, several hours after eating. I also started to use high polyphenol extra virgin olive oil. It really makes a difference when it comes to inflammation. It will usually have some kind of a grassy aroma and slightly bitter, peppery taste. That's actually a sign that it contains those beneficial polyphenols. I would take 1 to 2 tablespoons a day. And yes, a really good quality olive oil can be a little expensive, maybe around $25 or $30 a bottle. But when you think about it, you're only using a tablespoon or 2 daily, and quality really truly matters. I also made sure it came in a dark glass bottle and it had a recent harvest date. And I always started in a cool, dark cupboard, never in the refrigerator and never near heat. Because you are using only 1 to 2 tablespoons a day, I would recommend purchasing a smaller bottle. So another supplement I would take is zinc carnosine. I took 75 milligrams daily for about 3 months. It helps protect and repair the gut lining and can be very soothing for inflammation in the digestive tract. Now, I only take it occasionally now because maybe once or twice a week because I don't need it anymore. I also use digestive enzymes with every meal because they help break down the food more completely. Undigested food particles can really irritate an already irritated digestive system. And lastly, one of the biggest things that I did and added was making my own bone broth. It's nourishing, it's soothing, it's easy for the digestion, it's incredibly supportive for gut healing. It became a regular part of my healing because it's so nourishing and soothing. I would save the bones and the vegetable scraps and put them in a freezer bag, and then when I had enough, I made a batch. Now, if you want to add a multivitamin, you can, certainly. But personally, I prefer freeze-dried organ supplements because they are more food-based and nutrient-dense. There are several good companies that make some really nice supplements now in that area. And honestly, healing for me wasn't about finding one magic supplement. It was really about giving my body the right environment to heal, lowering inflammation, nourishing my gut, removing foods that were triggering my symptoms, managing stress, and being patient with the process. And I want to encourage you to do this for yourself. If you're struggling right now, please don't lose hope. Your body wants to heal. Sometimes it just needs the right support, the right nourishment, and enough time. So that's my story, and those are the things that truly helped me. I'm also going to put together a written report with the foods and the supplements that helped me, and I will put it in a link into the comments. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into comments because I do read them very carefully. I will do my best to answer them as often as I can. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for listening to my story, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.